Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and welcome to Tell, which is an evening honoring the 10th anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We are grateful to have you all here as we recount and reflect on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Tonight will be a night of storytelling, space sharing, and ultimately of celebration of the strength of the LGBTQ service member, veteran, and family community. Across the country, there are more than 1 million LGBTQ American veterans. These veterans are living representations of the community, our community, that has served in every war and conflict since the inception of our country. Many of these veterans served under policies that criminalized their identity and forced them to hide their sexual gender or orientation or face discharge or worse from the military. Despite this, our community has persevered and served anyway because we live by the motto service before self. Tonight's event will feature the stories of LGBTQ veterans and will touch on topics of sexual violence, mental health crisis, institutional bias, and violence. If you need to step away or are unable to continue watching, there will be a recording following this event that you can watch at your own pace. Please care for yourself and honor this anniversary in the way that is most beneficial to you. Now, this event is brought to you in partnership with our wonderful Richmond partners that include Diversity Richmond, Virginia Pride, Black Pride RVA, Us Giving Richmond Connections, and Prime Timers Central Virginia. We thank you all for joining us as partners as we share space this evening. In addition to our Richmond partners, tonight's event is also brought to you in collaboration with PBS's American Veteran. At the end of this evening's lineup, we will share a brief clip from the upcoming series featuring Brandon Anderson, who's an LGBTQ veteran who served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Just before we play this clip, we will end the live stream on social media as this clip is only available on Zoom and will not be a part of this evening's recording. If you need a link to the Zoom webinar, we will drop it in our Facebook event live stream to join on this platform. We appreciate your patience during this portion. Now, moving forward, I'd like to begin tonight with a moment of silence to honor all the LGBTQ service members we've lost in the line of duty and all of those we've lost to the many wounds of their service, mental, emotional, and physical. We mourn their loss, honor their sacrifice, and commit to fighting for a brighter future for the next generation. And thank you so much for sharing that moment with me. So just a little bit about my story. My name is Crystal Ellington. I am the Communications Director for Minority Veterans of America. And I enlisted in the Army after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, but I was still subjected to the rampant attitudes of trans and homophobia. I remember sharing my sexual orientation with several then trusted male members of my platoon, and I was met with invasive and problematic commentary, such as, "You're too pretty to like girls," or "Which one of you is the guy?" As a feminine presenting queer woman, I fully understand the level of privilege that afforded me. And I understand that my experience pales in comparison to many of the others, many of which their stories you will hear tonight. I have seen firsthand how queer service members I've had the honor to serve with have had everything about them questioned, from weekend social events to an individual's competence to do their job. While I've never had to choose between my military service and my relationship, I'm eternally grateful to those who have the courage and integrity to stand in their truth and to not apologize for who they are and who they love. So tonight you're going to share in the stories and experiences of several of these courageous individuals. Our first speaker is a shining example of that, Leila Ireland. So Leila is a retired Army veteran and served 13 years in the United States Army as a combat medic. After her military service, she served the last 3 years at the Healthcare Information Management Civilian Supervisor at Evans Army Community in Colorado Springs. Today, she serves as the chair for Minority Veterans of America Board of Directors. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Leila.
Aloha, ahi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today to help share in the celebration of the 10th anniversary of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Crystal, thank you so much for that great introduction and for leading tonight's event. You know, there's so many things to say about this momentous occasion. And I'm so happy to have been a part of the history in seeing everything happen. You know, being able to be alive to see those changes, those great changes that we are able to experience now. I joined the military in 2003. when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still being implemented. I remember signing my enlistment papers, asking if I was, engaged in any homosexual activity. As a trans woman of color, as an AAPI person, Native Hawaiian, Hispanic, I live at so many different intersectionalities. And one of those things is being trans and being part of the LGBTQ community. I formally identified as a gay male because that's the only language that I knew, to really describe what I was feeling. But being in the military at that time when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was being implemented was a very scary time. Prior to joining the military, I heard many stories of people that have service members who have come before me that have experienced, unfavorable types of discrimination. And so, or I should say just discrimination in general, not unfavorable. But I remember having to prove my service and my value to the team as a formally identifying gay person, because it was always in the back of my mind that I was not worthy enough to be part of the team because I wasn't manly enough. And in a hyper masculine environment, and an ever so changing landscape as the military is, there was always something that I needed to step up more. I had to prove more and to be a part of that team. But as soon as the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal happened, I realized a lot of my experiences as a formerly gay male and now as a trans woman still serving in the military, that there have been many moments that, it was a moment of clarity. I am finally able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. As a sexual assault survivor, being sexual assaulted in the military as a gay male at the time, and not being able to share that experience with anyone because of the rules that govern Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was very hard to live through those experiences and not be able to share that, which, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, it basically was the burden of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was much more dramatic and had a long-lasting impact on our communities, both military and LGBT, than the burden of actually being gay. And so when the repeal happened, it was just a very enlightening moment to say, aha, and it was a breather. But now as a trans woman, I get to see the changes that we, get to enjoy, the positive changes that we get to enjoy because of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But I'm super excited to be here with each and every one of you and to listen to all the other stories of our amazing panelists and to share in this celebration. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this presentation this evening, Leila. You have an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. So one question that I did have, how do you feel the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell impacted your service after it happened?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Crystal. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, many people in our society in our communities, in the military, had the question of, is this the right thing to do? Right? Will it bring down camaraderie and work performance? And it really did not. It in fact paved a clearer way for myself and other people like me, not just LGB, but also T as well as for trans folks. And so the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell pretty much was a template for trans people moving forward, right? It was a positive thing, and we prove that day in and day out. We show up and we show out 210%, because we're just like everyone else that has volunteered to serve this country, right? But I definitely would say I feel for moving forward, it was definitely a good choice. Because we are able to bring our authentic selves, our full selves to our jobs. We are able to really bring our authentic selves, our full selves to represent our families, the folks that we love, and to be prideful in those things. Because when you take care of your people, the mission takes care of itself. And when they are able to be themselves truly and authentically, and they're able to love openly, we create a long-lasting relationship, not just within our military, but with our communities as well. And so I definitely think it was a good and positive move.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And that really resonates with me because I think that people see soldiers and see those service members that are serving and just think of them as just that, as soldiers, and forgetting that they are people and they have feelings and they love just like everyone else. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Leila. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello. All right, so our next speaker for this evening is going to be Gene, who goes by he, him pronouns. Gene was born in a military town in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and later lived in Oklahoma before settling down in Richmond, Virginia in 1999. He retired from the Commonwealth of Virginia in 2016 and is currently president of Prime Timers Central Virginia. His hobbies include traveling, dining out, movies, and Broadway plays. Ladies and gentlemen, Gene Hall. Oh, Gene, you're muted.
There, I'm sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button.
No worries. Glad to have you.
Sorry about that. Primetimer Central Virginia is a group that work to provide educational and social opportunity for gay and bisexual males. So if you are in our geographic area and interested, I encourage you to check out our website, ptcva.org. I want to read a statement from a retired veteran of ours, whose idea this was who about 2.5 months ago came to me and our board of directors with the idea that we should commemorate this event, this 10-year frame. And I want to read a statement from Mark Hodges. He says, I want to thank all the groups that work to make this happen tonight for adopting this vision and creating this celebration. This date is so much more than the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's an end date for oppression that spanned our entire history. Yes, President Obama did sign papers that ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell on September 20th, 2011, but he did so much more on that historic day. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a dark chapter in the LGBTQ history, but chapters before it were even darker. And President Clinton's actions initiating Don't Ask, Don't Tell had not erased them. What President Obama did is labeled as the ending of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But in fact, he ended 235 plus years of oppression and misuse of those gay, lesbian, and bisexual servants in our military, in spite of their being faithful to the cause. President Obama summed it up himself on that day in September of 2011 when he stated, patriotic Americans in uniform will no longer have to lie about who they are in order to serve the country they love. And our armed forces will no longer lose the extraordinary skills and combat experience of so many gay and lesbian service members. The president's actions, the action of Congress, and the action of the military leaders that culminated on September 20th, 2011, did not simply end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. No, they made it clear that America was wrong during the years of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and all the years that preceded it. On this date, not only were the service members of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era freed and given a positive acknowledgement, but gay, lesbian, and bi service members from all times, living and deceased, were freed and acknowledged. Now a service member who might have been given a less than honorable discharge because of his or her sexuality can petition for that discharge to be upgraded, giving them benefits for housing, health services, education that had been denied them before. In addition, the respect of our government to the service and effort they gave. With the signing of the necessary document by President Barack Obama on September 20th, 2011, the American people said never more. This celebration, and those of you who have joined it, it is an awesome assurance that nevermore means everlasting. We need to keep alive the stories of those who were misused by our government simply because of their sexuality, and those that are today proving that we have been and are currently and will be great servants to our country, no matter our sexuality. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dean. Thank you for sharing. As I heard that you mentioned a very key component of legislation that's recently been passed, that service members who have had dishonorable discharges could possibly seek and petition to get those upgraded to honorable if they were discharged based on their sexual orientation. So thank you for bringing that up. So for the sake of brevity, we're going to continue right along. If anyone has any questions, just throw them in the chat. And hopefully if we have time at the end, we will get to those questions. So our next speaker is someone that is near and dear to my heart. We've hosted events together. They're a social media personality, a radio personality, and she is thebomb.com. So our next speaker is going to be T. White. As one of the most connected and diverse artists on the scene, Simply T Poetry has built her career as one of the most fierce and competitive performers. Born LaTanya White, Simply T is an American poet and international performer raised in Virginia. Her pieces offer insight into Black feminism, the LGBTQ community, and combat veteran strife. She credits her time as a drill instructor to enhancing her talents of orating, writing, and consulting. Her transition out of the Army after 15 years of active duty service allowed her to become a business owner, create a syndicated talk show, and become an avid volunteer. She currently hosts the Shift Combo on iHeartRadio, a council member of the National Small Business Association, and is the creative strategist for Minority Veterans of America. Ladies and gentlemen, Simply T Poetry, come to the mic.
What's going on, Crystal? It's so good to see you, sis. How are you?
I'm good, girl. Miss you.
I miss you so much. You're doing an amazing job. I'm like, oh my goodness, they don't even need me. I love her. She's so professional. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into my story. And unlike Leila, I cannot just like go by ear because I like to talk too much. So I'm going to read it for the sake of brevity and time and to keep this thing going. So I'm gonna read my story. And Crystal, if you have questions, then we can get into them. But in a nutshell, everyone, this is how it goes. In 2009, I was hand selected to work for a very new, highly secreted task force in DC. My excitement was overtaken weeks after in processing when I realized a lack of inclusion on my so-called elite team. It wasn't until after a year that I met this beautiful woman that was assigned as a mission support. I soon began to make every reason to steal away to see her. I desperately wanted to connect with somebody who wasn't a part of the good old boy system, but had the clearance level to come to my dungeon office. We had such an amazing vibe together. We began to take our meetings to lunch, and soon after we met when we weren't working. Our friendship quickly grew. It became difficult to put on when at work. It didn't help that her tomboyish demeanor was alluding to her preference. We both had been in the military for some time, so this dog and pony show, we were all too accustomed. A year later, we both received orders to drill sergeant school. After graduation, we moved in together and really established our relationship as a couple. Often, I went to see this drill sergeant with her bushwhack green hat on in action, as I often did, always remaining professional. Well, the day Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, I remember being in her office, talking to her and her peers. We all greeted, as we always did. But this day, after I was leaving, she grabbed my hands, and laid a wet one on me. The idea of these two green hats colliding, those lips connecting, and jaws dropping is a feeling I will always remember. It was the day that love won. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. For those of you that may not follow MV on social media, we've been having our Don't Ask, Don't Tell campaign sharing the stories of previous service members that served during and after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And T's story was featured this week, and it was it resonated with me so well because I can see the language that you use, and I could literally see the scene happening as I read it. And the day that love won, that was the phrase that stood out for me. So thank you so much for sharing your story and speaking your truth.
Always. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Minority Veterans of America, and congratulations. Don't ask, don't tell. Let's keep it going.
Yes. All right, moving right along. So our next speaker is John Hedgewood, who goes by he, him pronouns. John has been with MVA since May of this year and has been a shining example of hard work, dedication, and bringing a fervent passion for service. He's an Army veteran who has served during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and is the current MVA Seattle chapter leader. In addition to minority vets, John continues to bring his entire self to service by serving as the Lacey City Commissioner. He is a devoted husband, father, and cancer survivor. Ladies and gentlemen, John Hedgewood.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Like T, I also prepared a statement. This is in part of the statement that is going to be read tomorrow in the House of the Representatives in the U.S. Congress. I wanted to share the full version here, though, so that everybody can actually get the full impact. So here we go. I joined the military knowing that I couldn't show up as my authentic self. I told myself that it would be easy enough since I grew up in a very rural and anti-gay western part of West Texas. And by comparison, this would be a proverbial walk in the park. When I had first heard the news that Don't Ask, Don't Tell would be repealed, I was incredulous and nearly in tears. It was almost unimaginable that this could ever actually occur within my lifetime, and that I would actually be witnessing it firsthand. My then partner and I were both military and couldn't even so much as acknowledge our relationship in the workplace. The darker side of this otherwise heartening news is that in the coming months, until it was fully repealed, it would feel like an even more hostile environment to navigate than it was previously. With Don't Ask, Don't Tell in place and it being the status quo for over a decade, I had the privilege of mostly flying under the radar of most who deemed those from the LGBT plus community as a benign part of the fighting force. Now with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell being at the forefront of media's focus and the military's collective consciousness, it seemed to all but paint a target on my back as I became the focus of everyone's ire around me that disagreed with the repeal that was looming. I now carry with me a sense of resentment towards the military because of the harassment, hazing, bullying, and discrimination that I encountered while serving from those that wore the same uniform. To put this in perspective, 10 years ago, I couldn't get married in my state. 10 years ago, I couldn't openly affirm my orientation. 10 years ago, I couldn't give my partner a simple kiss in public. 10 years ago, it wasn't safe to walk down the street holding hands. 10 years ago, I had to choose between serving my country and being who I am. Now, we've made some progress as a society. Last month, I celebrated 10 wonderful years with that same man I couldn't even acknowledge at work 10 years ago. He is now my husband, and that same military that would have discharged him a decade ago now honors our marriage. They were surprisingly accommodating and granting a compassionate reassignment of duty location whenever I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. This doesn't mean that homophobia just simply disappeared overnight. Today, it's still not always safe for us to hold hands in public, and members of the LGBT plus community are still actively being discriminated against in our armed forces and in our society as a whole. These issues didn't disappear overnight whenever Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. LGBT plus members of our armed forces need and deserve greater protections granted so that they may continue to contribute to the greatness of our military as a fully integrated and welcome part of it, rather than continuing to try and do so from the margins. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, John. That really touched my heart because I can only imagine the harassment that you went through when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And no one should ever have to endure that in their workplace, especially with people that they share these experiences with that are life and death. So I apologize for everything that you've been through and thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so our next speaker is going to be Ashley Carruthers, one of my favorite people in this whole world. Ashley Carruthers serves as the Operations Director at Minority Veterans of America. Prior to that, she has served as Communications Specialist, serving the federal government. Ashley served as an outreach coordinator with the American Red Cross, serving the military community overseas. She also served as a logistics technician for Supply Activity Europe, serving soldiers all over the country. Ashley is no stranger to activism and fought policies such as Don't Ask, Don't Tell while serving on active duty. Ashley has led various roundtable discussions on LGBTQ issues with various military leadership throughout Europe. In 2010, Ashley helped outserve chapter leadership in Germany, coordinate meetups and events for members before taking over as chapter lead in 2011, and continued to lead as chapter programs manager with that organization. And I'm so welcome to bring to the stage Ashley Carruthers.
Well, thank you, Crystal. It's an honor to be with everybody tonight. And in kind of, prepping for tonight and what to talk about, I didn't really know what avenue to go, because whenever I think of September 20th, I'm taken back to one place. And it's this little Mexican restaurant in Kaiserslautern, Germany, where I'm surrounded by my chosen family. And it was a night of celebration, relief, brother and sisterhood, and just a moment of being in awe at what just took place and feeling a sense of safety for the first time in a long time. So why were we there? Well, we were celebrating the repeal, of course. And we decided to come together because we always got together at least once a month just to get away. But this was the first time that we were in public near any installation in a large gathering, and actually breathing easy and holding hands with partners and just laughing and sharing stories and just being in a moment of celebration together for the first time in close proximity. So before that night, when we were, under this umbrella, if you will, you mentioned outserve. This was the group that was at that restaurant that night. And we were an underground network. We were behind the scenes, handing business cards to each other at Starbucks, at the KMCC mall, and trying to get folks to join this top secret group so we could go off to Nuremberg, we could go off to Frankfurt together, we could go to Cologne Pride and just be with one another away from the installation, not have to worry about anybody and not have to hide. Even though we were still hiding, we were just hiding in plain sight in a different city. But I remember, in that moment of celebration, there was a moment of reflection, because we had so many people that were on this train to get to the repeal, but often felt that we weren't going to get there because of where they worked, who they worked with, what they did for, whichever branch of service that they were serving at the time. They knew that they weren't going to be able to come out. So a lot of those folks couldn't even make the dinner that night. And so even though we were celebrating, we were still seeing this stigma, this, homophobic rhetoric still looming over us like a big heavy cloud, because they couldn't be there. They couldn't be present with us celebrating, and they were still in hiding. And that was really hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around. They're like, well, you guys are out now, you can just have fun and be who you are and live your life. But that wasn't true for everybody. And so when I think of this day and this anniversary and what it means and how to celebrate, I reflect on those individuals, and I want to celebrate them, and I want to remember them. I want to remember those late night conversations and walking them through how to come out to their families, how to have a relationship in hiding still, and have those hard conversations and help them work through whatever it is that they were working through. And I feel it's important to honor them. And if they're out there listening tonight, I don't want you to think that you're forgotten. I know many of you are still in hiding and still not able to truly be your 100% authentic self. And those of you that are just, everybody from that time period, I want you to know that we're still fighting for you and we're never going to stop. But I want you to know that you still have a family. I still love you, and we're in this together forever, no matter what.
Aww. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ashley. I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that in the military, change happens so slowly. It's very incrementally. So even 10 years later, after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, there's still those transphobic and homophobic individuals out there. And, you know, a lot of times they're the ones with the platform and the voice. So letting those folks know that may still be in hiding or not comfortable being out, letting them know that they are still seen and valued and remembered, we greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next speaker this evening is going to be Dottie Zotai. I really hope I pronounced that right. I practiced. So Dottie spent 11 years in the Army Reserves during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. During this time, she was assigned to medical and training units from Niagara Falls, New York to Camp Parks, California, and was activated to serve at Madigan Army Medical Center during Operation Enduring Freedom. She has a bachelor's from Cornell University in Feminist Gender and Sexuality Studies, a master's in educational leadership from CSU East Bay, and a master's in human anatomy and physiology instruction from Northeast College of Health Sciences. Dottie is originally from the East Coast and moved to the Bay Area in 2009. She served for 6 years on the board of directors for Rainbow Community Center, with the last 2 years as president, and is currently a surgical technologist program director. She is passionate about continually improving education by creating brave, expansive, and empowering spaces where all identities are acknowledged and supported. And coming to the mic, Dottie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So my story, I was a straight A student of a single mom, had at least 2 jobs all through my high school years to help support our small family. It was me, my sister, my mom, with visits to my dad's on holidays. And to say I was an overachiever doesn't complete the picture. I had a need to do what I was supposed to, be what I was supposed to, and not let anyone down. And I was fitting into that box really well, so much so that at the beginning of my senior year, I got an academic scholarship to Cornell University, but I was finding it harder and harder to hide from who I was inside. And my life didn't feel right. And the best way for me to give myself some space and rebel at the same time was to join the Army Reserves. I made many people angry, frustrated, deferred my scholarship, and joined in 2000 when I was 17. I entered in the fall of that year to basic training. Then I went to OJT. And after returning to college, after finishing Surg Tech school, I made sure to make every weekend drill while getting my straight A's in college, and I still felt lost. I decided to take another deferment from college, and I moved across country using the guy I started dating in OJT as a reason. I got an Army marriage at 19, and when he deployed to Afghanistan, I had my first full lesbian experience. It felt like all the feelings and turmoil in my life finally made sense. What I knew as a child, my attraction to women, could no longer be stuffed down and ignored. So fast forward, and I tell my then husband when he gets back, who said he knew already, but he didn't think I'd figure it out until much later. And I could date women. That was totally fine. You know, we were in the Army anyway. I was like, no, I figured it out. Like, yeah. So we got a divorce. I went back to Cornell and I majored in feminist gender and sexuality studies to be as gay as I could be. And I flourished. But I still had to go back into that box every time I had to report to drill, to training, and when I was mobilized. I had to encounter the anger and threats when I turned down men in my units for dating, when we had our longer trainings and everyone wanted to hook up. And then when some found out I was a lesbian and used it as a veiled threat when they wanted something from me. I encountered regular sexual harassment, homophobia, transphobia, and sexual assault when I was on active duty during Operation Enduring Freedom. I was tired of hiding who I loved and a whole part of who I was, serving under the guise of fighting for our country's freedom when so many of us were not free to even be us. It was why I asked Joe Solanese what he and the HRC, Human Rights Campaign, were doing to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell when I met him at his presentation at Cornell in February of 2007. He said, everything we can. And I told him that his can was not enough. And it wasn't fast enough for those of us serving right now. I could pass it straight, I told him, so I didn't have to deal with as much as others. But being stuck in a closet in the military felt like being stuffed in a coffin just the same. What got me through was family. Family I found. Those of us with the knowing glances, the undercover HRC sticker inside a notebook, or a courageous moment to share when we finally trusted someone. They saved me, but I couldn't continue. For me, the juxtaposition of getting a coin 1 month and then threatened to be kicked out the next, not an uncommon occurrence for other queer soldiers I knew, was the turning point and confirmed my decision to be done. I was tired of the anxiety, the sick feeling I would get each time leading up to my weekend drill or annual training, and even more tired of the strain it put on my relationship because I couldn't include my partner in anything. I could die with and for all of my fellow soldiers, but I couldn't share that I was queer. I couldn't call out some of the sexism or homophobia for fear of a target on my back, and the science of it was profound. I decided to finish out my time on January 31st, 2011, serving almost exactly 11 years to the day. And my then partner was finally able to attending my last drill and meeting those I was serving with. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that courageous story. I could not imagine, having those like secret meetings and the stickers inside the notebooks. That part really stood out to me. But the fact that you were able to find that chosen family, that is amazing. So thank you so much for sharing, Jody.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal.
All right, up next, we have Raymond Curtis, who goes by he, him pronouns. Raymond Curtis is an Iraq War Army veteran who served from 2003 to 2009. He lives in Harrisonburg, Virginia with his husband, 2 dogs, 2 cats, and his niece and nephew, whom they are currently fostering. He graduated from Columbia University in 2018 with a bachelor's in political science and is now working toward a master's in public administration at James Madison University. He also serves as the graduate assistant to the Director of State Government Relations for JMU. Raymond, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you. And just also a quick shout out to everyone who has been speaking. It's just so crazy seeing all of these overlapping stories and these similarities that we're all sharing. It's very fulfilling, chilling too. Also, so I joined the Army National Guard as well in 2003. In response to reactions I had gotten to coming out of the closet in Arkansas around the same time, obviously. I was 17 years old and my senior year, and I decided I just couldn't hold this anymore. I'd known all my life that I was gay. I had struggled with the battle of, growing up in a Southern Baptist community, in a Southern Baptist household, of this self-loathing that I carried with me. And also thinking there was some way I could change it or something like that. And I'd finally grown to accept it in my late teens. And when I came out, it didn't go over well, as you can imagine. I was kicked out of every social circle that I was a part of, and as far as the church was concerned. There were insinuations made that I wasn't suitable to work in the nursery because for the associations or the insinuations that there was some kind of danger of having me there. And it was infuriating, and I wanted to get the hell out of there. I had a small, tight-knit group of friends in my high school who had actually, they weren't churchgoers or anything like that, and they had taken it very well. They were very accepting of me, and when I came out, and supported me through everything that I went through with my family. They had all also joined, and up until this point, everyone in my family felt like had been in the military and had gone to war. My dad was in Vietnam. My grandfather was in the Korean War. My great uncle was in World War II. My cousin was in the Marines. And I was like, I do not want to join the military. It's the last thing I want to do. But in the culmination of coming out and realizing I had no place, I sought that place out in the military. And so it wasn't a traditional Guard experience. It was 2003. I went to training And and nobody then just got through it. And then a few months after, not even 2 months after I got back and out of training, there became an opportunity to volunteer to deploy to Iraq. I volunteered because, again, I just wanted to get out of Arkansas. And so I ended up deploying. We had to train for a few months before that. And I joined these men who this was a unit of all men, by the way, but I joined these men having not met any of them ever. It wasn't even the unit I was assigned to. We trained for a few months in Fort Lewis, Washington, and then deployed for 12 months, starting in October of 2005 and returning in November of 2006. The experience as a whole was very traumatizing. Nobody, I thought, was picking up on my sexual orientation. There was this constant fear, though, that they would, and it would all be over. And so, it was like this 360-degree war front where I had, enemy combatants on one side, but then on the other side, I had to make sure that I was always watching my back. I was always making sure that nobody saw the MySpace page. Sorry if I'm dating myself here, but the gay MySpace page that I had, that I would go to and sneak in, into, and make sure nobody was sitting next to me at the computer lab or something like that, when I was deployed and stuff. And it was awful. There were folks getting sent home from the deployment when they were discovered having gay sexual relationship with somebody else there, things like that. And then something amazing happened. We got back, and during the out processing part, I had maybe half a dozen different guys who I had grown close to during this deployment come to me separately and explain to me that they had deduced that I was gay and that I didn't have to say anything and that it was fine and it didn't change how they felt about me. And so that was one differing experience, I think, that I've had from most people, because that just completely changed everything that I thought about everything. Afterwards, I moved to New York and changed units because I was going to school, did the whole give my boyfriend a female name so I could talk about him when I was with this new unit, because I didn't know any of these guys. And continue to hold up that lie. So when the time came to re-enlist, I chose not to, because like many of the people on here, I didn't want to live that lie anymore. Although there was something about the military that I felt very connected with. I knew there was no way that I could continue on living this lie. And so I got out of the military. Of course, the day that the repeal happened, I cried. In just pure joy, to knowing how this was going to change everything. And then since then, I've just dedicated most of my career and life to understanding what challenges we still face and helping strive towards overcoming those challenges, whether it's campaigning to ensure that anybody who was discharged with other than honorable or dishonorable discharge due to their sexual orientation can get that overturned and get that honorable discharge back, and have that slate wiped clean. Understanding what trans people and trans veterans and trans service members are going through, and trying to bring that to people who don't know any trans people. I had the honor of deploying with a trans woman pre-transition, and she has been a source of just, well, I don't even know how to explain it. She's the reason that I understood that there was so little that I understood about the community, and that there was even less that folks who may have supported me as a white cis man, being gay, who had all these preconceived notions about the rest of our community. And so it's been my honor to just continue to push towards overcoming these challenges that we continue to face. So yeah, that's my don't ask, don't tell story.
Thank you so much for that, Raymond. And you brought to light another layer of fear when being deployed, being in Iraq or Afghanistan, especially at that time, there was already a fear of violence. And then having that additional layer of being afraid of, being outed, I can't imagine. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Absolutely. All right, our next panelist coming to the stage is Tom Hove, who goes by he, him pronouns. Tom is now the interim training manager for the Veterans Training Support Center and is familiar with the WDVA, my apologies, in his role as Vet Corps Regional Coordinator for King County and formerly as a Vet Corps member at Seattle University. While at SU, Tom created a curriculum on military culture, which was delivered to faculty, staff, administration, and students. He was involved in varying areas of student program development and was responsible for the creation of the Veteran Alumni Association. Tom served in the U.S. Navy as a hospital corpsman and is originally from Montana, but currently calls SeaTac home with his husband and two beautiful toddlers. Tom, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And thank you for everyone sharing their stories this evening. I mean, it's absolutely has been a moving experience for me, so I appreciate it. So my story, I joined the military the year that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. I was in boot camp, and I remember sitting in a diversity, equity, and inclusion training that focused on what it would look like once Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And it was being taught by a white, straight man. And I remember sitting there looking around like, anybody else? Like, this person was the subject matter expert on LGBTQ, and he hadn't honestly had a clue. So he was just reading from the slides. So when I joined the military, coming out of Montana, I was questioning my sexuality. And so joining, going through boot camp, going through Corps school, then being sent over to Naval Hospital Guam on the other side of the world, it was a lot to navigate through. And when I got to Guam, I started to question, who am I? Who is Tom? And at that point, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. So I was like, maybe this is something I start to explore. And I had met a guy on the island, and I don't know if Grindr was out then, but I believe we met on an app, realized we were at the same command. Then we met once in person, and he asked to take me out on a date, and I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Yes, okay, great. So we went to dinner, we went back to his place and watched a movie, and then things started to progress, and he started to be very forceful with pushing himself on me. And I was, he was trying to make me do things that I was not ready for. And so I was like, nope, not comfortable. No, thank you. Got a bit aggressive, finally stopped. I ended up leaving. The days following it, I was like, oh my God, that was my fault. I put myself in that situation. Like, I had a lot of guilt about it. But the experience didn't end there. So it came out that this individual had a girlfriend, and he ended up telling her that I was attracted to him, and that I was trying to make moves. And then rumors started to spread across the command that I was gay. And so I was outed when I wasn't ready to be outed. There was a lot of hesitation that I felt around coming out, because it was, growing up in Montana and, being teased and being called gay and all of that kind of stuff. I wasn't strong enough to be able to do that here, especially when my support network was on the other side of the world. I was in such an unknown area. And so, so I played it off. Like it wasn't a big deal. I kept denying that I was gay. And eventually, once I got back to the States and I got the support, and I was able to do some healing, I was able to come out and to be to be proud. I married my husband right before I got out of the military. And then when I got out, I actually wanted nothing to do with veterans or the military community. I said I was done, had a bad experience, and I didn't want to engage. And so I went to school, ended up at a Jesuit university in Seattle, and this one veteran kept trying to talk me into, I kept running into him in classes and things, and he kept trying to talk me into joining the club out on campus. And I was like, no, want nothing to do with it. And one day ended up going to this club meeting, and a representative was there from the school and said, if nobody steps up to be president of the SVA, that they have to dissolve the club. And I jokingly say that the spirit moved me that day, and I volunteered for it. And that began my journey of hearing other people's stories, realizing that I am not alone in my experience, and realizing that there is such a great need to support our transitioning service members, and to be that representation that people are looking for. And so I have found my second mission in continuing to serve our veterans and their families through the work that I do in the Washington Department of Veteran Affairs. And yeah, I'm a proud gay man. My husband and I were able to adopt two beautiful children from the foster system. And so, through adversity comes the opportunity for growth and for change. And I've, through that adversity, I've found the ability to love myself and to be true to myself. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Tom. I guess one piece that really resonated for me was the fact that you shared that you didn't feel associated with the Army, or didn't want to be associated, with the military anymore. And I think that a lot of service members have had that same experience, especially during and right after Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So thank you for being a part of the conversation today and knowing that you have community with us. So thank you. All right, our next speaker is going to be Stephanie Merlo. This is someone that is truly an inspiration. I stalk her all the time on social media just to see what she's up to. Stephanie Merlo is an inaugural member of Virginia's LGBTQ Advisory Board. Prior to this appointment, she served on the board of directors for Virginia Pride, ending her 5-year tenure as the organization's president. Stephanie has a storied history of service and leadership positions, supporting her communities at the cross sections of underserved, marginalized, and veteran populations. Stephanie serves as the regional chapter leader for Minority Veterans of America and focuses efforts on building community and advocating on behalf of our most marginalized and underserved veteran communities. Stephanie and her wife love to spend time with friends, do wine tastings, me too, and are constantly entertained by their 3 pets, Vincent, Samus, and Kiki. Welcome to the stage, Stephanie Merlo.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so happy to be here and able to share my story with you all, and hearing all of your stories are just so compelling. And it sounds like we're all still healing in some way, shape, or form. And I think when we do panels like this, it does allow us to, continue that healing process, but it also allows those who are listening in to begin healing too, because there's others out there that have had similar experiences. For my story, I enlisted in high school and went in 2003, and I served until 2007. So I went in kind of thinking maybe I'm gay. I don't know. I mean, I did have relations with a girl before I went in, but of course, whenever our parents ask, I'm going to say no, but my mom knew better. And she kept asking and she kept asking and she kept asking, especially after I enlisted. And thinking back at it now, I think she was really concerned, because if that is my lifestyle, which she knew it was, how am I going to be treated when I go in, right? Well, I think kind of what her thoughts were, and her suspicions were exactly what happened, you know. There are people who definitely had great experiences in the military as they served during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I had a bumpy relationship with the Army as I served. Once I got to my duty station, I served in Dexheim, Germany. It's in the middle of nowhere, plopped in the middle of the vineyards. You didn't really have anything to do. There was an SO station maybe 3 miles down, and that's if you have a car. And it was 2 weeks in, I'm on post, I'm 19, I don't drink, but because I am legal to drink in Germany, why the heck not, right? And so I go down there with a couple of my friends from the barracks. Currently, we are serving during rear detachment, meaning everybody else was over in Iraq, and we were getting ready to go to Iraq. So we're just waiting for our papers to come in. And we walked down to this little club called the Annex. So I'm sitting there with my friends, and one drink leads to 2 drinks, 2 drinks might have led to 3. And I'm a lightweight. I was probably like $110 on a good day there, maybe wet. And I remember there's this woman who was sat down at the table with me, was 1 rank higher than me. And you know, of course, like me being in a man's world, I see a woman who is connecting with me. I'm starting to feel safe, and I trusted them. And so when all of my friends left to go back up the hill to the barracks, they said that they'll walk with me because they're in the building next to me. So as we leave that building, I get pulled onto the other side of the building, and that's where I am sexually assaulted by this woman. And what really sucked is that I trusted this individual. I just met them, and of course, but it's a small post and I don't know anybody. So for the first person to really kind of show me kindness in that type of sense, I put trust in them. But also, who am I going to tell? And was that sexual assault? I don't know. Did I put myself in that position? What she did, does that count? Did I ask for that? That was totally on me, right? All of this was going through my head, and I couldn't say anything because then I'm incriminating myself, right? If I go and tell the sergeant, hey, so I was with this girl, don't ask any questions, that's not going to happen. So from there, it was so difficult for me to move every single day, seeing that person and just staring immediately down when they would walk by. But it wasn't also just that, it was also being sexually harassed every single day by male soldiers who were banging on my door or putting condoms on my door handle, doing suggestive or making suggestive comments and doing suggestive, you know, body language. I did not know what to do. And I ran across an NCO. I was walking down the hill and he was driving his car and he goes, hey, do you need a ride? And at first I was like, don't, I'm over this. He goes, girl, nobody wants you. Get in the car. Let me take you down to the hill because it's cold outside. And I was like, okay. And that sergeant protected me in a lot of ways. And then shortly after that, there was a group of women who I also met, and they took me under their wing. I don't know why. I don't know how. They sought me out and they were like, why don't you come hang out with us? And that's when they had gaydar. I had gaydar too, apparently. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but they took me under their wing and we went to this little gay bar in Kaiserslautern, Germany, also known as K-Town because the word is a mouthful. Ashley, I totally been to that Mexican restaurant, and I had a time of my life. And then from there on out, you know, I hung out with these women, and I had that NCO and I had a warrant officer as well that looked out for me. And it felt a little bit safe, but still I had that, I still could not be myself because, you know, there was something that I was in an interview with Lindsay and Ashley before, and Lindsay had mentioned how it's a community. You live and you breathe this, you wake up and this is what you see. I can go out for the weekend and drive 4 hours out of the way. But when I come back, put my boots on or my PT shoes, whatever it is, and I have to now be a soldier. I am now Specialist Brown. And I couldn't be anything else. So my identity was constantly being stripped. And as you know, your identity is stripped already when you get to basic training. You're no longer that teenager that you were. You are now a whole new thing that the military wants you to be. But if you identify as LGBTQ, oh, forget about it. You don't exist. So it was so hard for me to really move through every day. I was suicidal. And I just felt like a puddle of mud. But if it wasn't for that little group of women, which they called themselves the Glitz Clique, I didn't come up with it. And, my NCO that took me under, I know for a fact I would not be here today. And, even that NCO stood up for me when one of our other higher ranking NCOs went to battalion and tried to write a report saying I am under suspicions for being gay. And I'm lost of words just because I'm like thinking back to it right now of the fear that I had that I'm going to lose my career. And I'm just at the time 2 years in. So when I got out, I'm sorry, what was the panelist's name before me? He had mentioned that he didn't want to have anything to do with veterans or the military. That was me to the key. I don't want to have anything to do with y'all because I feel like I was set up for failure. And that is something that you preach that you would never do. It took me a long time to really acknowledge my veteranness and hold on to it and really seek friends and join a community. And I really feel that outside of my little group that I had in the military, minority veterans is actually the most largest group of friends that I've actually had. Because before that, I really didn't care to talk to too many veterans at all. I didn't. So thank you for that. But now that the repeal has happened, it's really nice to see, especially how this younger generation is. I know it's going to flourish and they're going to make a stand and hopefully things are going to continue to change because I know it's still not safe out there. But I hope that this does allow, and from what I've seen, it does kind of allow them to be their authentic selves. But we all know that there's so much more that still needs to happen for these young soldiers and sailors and everybody to really walk down the street to the PX and be able to hold someone's hand. So we still got a lot of work to do. And so don't get comfortable.
I totally agree with that, Steph. There is so much work to be done. And as I said before, things happen in the military very, very slowly. But even one of the panels that you're on, the LGBTQ VA panel, those organizations and those subcommittees are so important moving forward. So we have our own voice and we have our opinions that are noted instead of it coming from what people think we should need. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
sharing, Steph. All right, so our next panelist we have is Sarah. So Sarah Klim retired in 2016 after serving 21 active years in the Marine Corps. Sarah is a gunny turned stay-at-home mom, co-parenting 6 exceptional children. She is supported and strengthened by the love of her wife. Sarah participated in 10 named operations, over 9 deployments, and had a career highlight of serving in the Presidential Helicopter Squadron. She witnessed the military getting stronger for its diversity. Sarah served when women were first allowed into combat service roles through Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the subsequent repeal. She experienced all these inclusionary changes while having to remain silent about herself. She experienced discrimination at the VA when coming out, but she was never a quitter. Sarah secured the medical treatment required that she needed. A pain was left in Sarah's heart for the other veterans that may not have the ability to find the care they deserve. Sarah, always a Marine, has taken on the new mission of support and advocacy. She volunteers as a policy analyst with Minority Veterans of America, and we are so honored to have her here tonight. Sarah, the mic's all yours.
Thanks, Crystal, for the introduction. And Lindsay and Minority Veterans of America, you're great. Everything you're doing is amazing, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So my story is bittersweet. Spending that much time in leadership roles through the military, and it's very bittersweet because me being a transgender woman the whole time along, I couldn't come out. Don't Ask, Don't Tell is very important for me. It's that stepping stone for the open service of transgender persons. And I knew through my service that, and as I watched it happen, it was just amazing to see these stepping stones. And I've prepared my remarks. I know we're quick on time, right, or short on time right now. So let me go through them really quick. First, I want to say thanks for the participation in this event. It's amazing to hear these stories from everybody. They come from different perspectives, but there's so much overlap. And that's the greatest thing that can pull us together. So you see, my perspective is a little different. That 21 active years, 23 total, transgender woman, a little different. So I joined in 92 when the enlistment contract had that section, like Leila mentioned, about asking if you were homosexual or bisexual. To me, I was none of those, so it didn't matter. I joined, and then I became a Marine. And my background is Pennsylvania country. Think Amish. That's where I grew up. During my time, there was no information. It was before the internet. I was still figuring myself out. So here I am halfway through my career, and I figured myself out as a transgender woman in the middle of Don't Ask, Don't Repeal, or Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I waited for that repeal. I got to say, the most amazing thing was my retirement date is the same day that then Secretary of Defense Ash Carter announced open service for transgender women. We know what happened after that. But during that time, as a leader, as a staff NCO in the Marine Corps, I got to witness Don't Ask, Don't Repeal for my Marines, and holding secretly to myself what it's going to mean for transgender Marines down the road, or transgender service members down the road. I knew what it held. And I want to go back. One of the times that was most amazing to me was after the Don't Ask, Don't Repeal. I look forward to the Marine Corps Ball. It's a time-honored tradition. If you're not a Marine, you don't really know, but you do know at the same time about how important that is. I was looking forward to seeing those Marines, my Marines, come with their partners that they were never allowed to show before. I was looking forward to that, and I saw it. And what I saw when that happened was also the leadership in my unit was amazing about it. There was no hate. There was no discrimination about it. Yes, the younger generations, yeah, they chit-chatted, but everybody was thankful for it because they got to see their Marines being themselves. And it was a positive for me as a transgender woman to see that, like knowing that down the road, we'll be allowed to have open service and it'll be the same. And I didn't get to see the open service, but I know that going through it with my friends, my acquaintances, everybody else, all those former Marines that I served with during all those combat tours, when I came out, they stood beside me. Even if they didn't necessarily agree with what I was doing, they stood beside me because they knew us as people. And for me, watching Don't Ask, Don't Tell and that progression was just so amazing because I saw the change. I saw the diversity. I saw the inclusion coming in. And we all hear it. It's the same excuses. We can go back to the stopping, the desegregation in the military, even allowing Black people in. We can talk about allowing women in. We can talk about, it's all the same excuses. And every time what the military does is prove the critics wrong. And we need to continue proving the critics wrong. That's why I'm happy to be part of the MVA let's prove the critics wrong, because it's going to. The military is designed around a mission, and that mission is made up of people. the better your people are, the better the mission. So with that, I leave it back to you, Crystal. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate this evening.
Thank you so much for sharing your truth, Sarah. And it's always good to see your wonderful face. I still love your lipstick. It still looks great.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna try to go ahead and get things closed here soon. Those are all the panelists we have for this evening. Thank you to each and every one of you who has shared your story, shared your truth, and actually just being a part of a greater community and doing so with MVA. So thank you again, every one of you. So our next clip is going to be from American Veteran in a collaboration with PBS. So we're going to share that exclusive sneak peek clip premiering on October 26th. American Veteran is a 4-part documentary series tracing the veteran experience across the arc of American history and exploring the present-day divide between civilian and veteran communities. Every voice in American Veteran, from hosts to interviewees, is that of a veteran. The series is part of a multi-platform initiative, which will also include a podcast and YouTube digital short series. You can watch the first episode of the digital series now on the PBS YouTube Voices channel. The clip you are about to see is from the broadcast series airing on PBS next month. It's part of a section that talks about how identities of difference play out for some veterans when you are not a young, heterosexual, cisgender white male. It shows the ways in which the military is reflective of society. Now, because the series hasn't been released, we're required to end the live stream before sharing the clip. For all of those who are joining us today via the live stream, we encourage you to tune into the American Veteran premiere next month. You can visit pbs.org/American Veteran for more information. Allow us a short pause while we end. I don't know about anybody else, but I am fighting back the tears right now. To be discharged dishonorably and to also lose a partner, it's a pain that I can't even imagine. So that clip does, get me excited about seeing the rest of the American Veteran series on PBS, and hopefully everyone on the call this evening will be tuning in as well. But with that, we want to thank each of you for joining us tonight and bearing witness to our collective truth. Thank you for helping us feel seen and heard and supported by those we love. I'd also like to extend our deepest gratitude to each of our incredible speakers tonight, each of whom are currently serving or have served wearing the uniform of the U.S. Armed Forces. We honor your service and all that you sacrificed in your lives to do so. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.